All right, patch notes part 2. This one should be a little bit shorter because I'm going to be spending less time explaining my reasonings, but we do have a lot to get through now that we've gone through all of the classes. So first up, some of the influence and buildings. These are going to need to be changed as we go along. These did not get very much playtesting. There's going to need to be clarifications on things, but the first two clarifications are for the engineering lab and library. Neither one of these is going to be, I think, especially a surprise to anyone in the campaign, but we did put them in here to make sure it's clear that the engineering lab is intentionally obtuse. Until the artificer class is unlocked, you're not really going to understand how to use the engineering lab very much, although people that pay attention will notice that there's something at the end of the patch notes, at the end of this video, that will apply to what you might be able to use. So the skill system. The skill system is getting a pretty significant overhaul. Everything's kind of being normalized along the different characters, and we're introducing officially the class competency feature at 7. The long and short of this is basically that your class is going to automatically be good at whatever it is that they have as class skills at level 7. So you're going to get 1 rank in every class skill at level 7. And that means that you'll kind of bump everything else up as you go along, similar to the way that the Bard ability works now that it's been altered and changed into the game, where they put when they designate something as a class skill, they get a point automatically. That sort of thing is going to work for class competency. Now, the reason that we're doing it like this is so that if we decide, okay, we want even more skills and things, rather than having to rework all of the classes and rebalance everything, we can just change that class competency feature to affect multiple levels. So the ultimate goal potentially is to be able to have a toggle where a campaign can be either fairly low skill abilities or fairly high skill abilities, where they have 4, 7, and 10, which are the break points for skills that they can just say, all right, everybody gets features at those levels. They could even do it at level 1, so 1, 4, 7, and 10. I think having all of those would be crazy, but being able to have that thing to move around and say, okay, if you are a level 4 character of a certain class, you should get all of your skill points, and that ability should get 1 skill in every class skill, would mean that your characters are going to be a little bit more competent at lower level. It's going to push down that idea of the danger and the heroism, right? So your heroic mouse at level 4 will feel more heroic if you're getting your class competency stuff at level 4. And if we want to in the future, we might be able to select both of them. So they might get at 4 and at 7, or 4 and 10, or something like that. Right now it's just at 7, and I think this is going to be a good way to introduce the idea of it and see how it plays in practice. And again, similar to the other stuff, if things end up being buffed, everybody gets new shiny toys. If things get nerfed, then it kind of feels bad to take away some of the things that you already have. So we might end up making it the class competency feature 4 instead of 7. That would be the thing that would be most likely to happen, but we might also do 2 if we end up finding that having lots of abilities ends up being more fun than having fewer abilities and needing to spread them across different classes and to have some teamwork be the core driving element. So Thievery was added to Brawler. It's also added on here. The mortality rules got changed, but honestly, they really haven't been changed. This is the way that we've been playing with mortality. It's just not how it's been working in the rulebook. Basically, the idea that you wouldn't be able to do an action during a scene just wasn't fun in playtest. So basically, as long as you're still alive until the end of the scene, you're going to be able to do things. And we did keep in the 6 to 20. You can take actions to the end of the scene as if you had a hit point. And the reason that we kept that one in was because the idea of you being at a hit point ended up being very relevant. So say a character goes to -5 and they roll a 6 to 10, right? They are severely wounded. They will die in 2 rounds. They're at -5 still. So if they take more damage, they were already previously rolling with a -5, their mortality check. If they go down to -15, now they're rolling with a -15. So they take 10 extra damage, they're now at -15 instead of -5. If they had gotten the thing is they can function as if they had a hit point, they wouldn't be at -5, they'd be at 1. And so they would go from 1 to -9. And then if they got the 16 again, they would go back up to 1. It's just at the end of the scene they go to 0. So they're still not actually above 0, but they function as higher hit points. It means they're much less likely to die in a single blow, and it also means at higher level plays, when you have bigger mortality bonuses and there's the less swinginess of damage from the monster damage change, that you're more likely to have instances where you're able to recover from things. We added the mortality thing for drinking multiple potions. Gonna skip the life-changing injury for just a second, because this is also on mortality. This was the rules from the playtest. They just weren't anywhere in the rulebook. This was in the DM's side of things. And so we're adding this officially into the player side of things. Now, in the mortality section, we're going to be making the delineation between the sort of tiers of play, being level 1 to level 3 is the first tier of play, and then past level 3, getting on to level 4 is getting to the second tier of play. If you're level 4, you're Heroic Mouse, and if you die, you might have instead a life-changing injury if your body can be recovered. So if you rolled that -5 or rolled that -10 on your mortality, and you die, but the group defeats their enemy and is able to limp back home with your body, you'll wake up later, and myself or the DM is going to work with you about what that means for you. What that means. Are you missing an arm? Did you get one of your legs crippled? Does it make sense for you to be able to recover from it eventually? Is there going to be some sort of special quest or thing that you need to do in order to recover? It's not just going to be downtime, and it's not going to be just simple, I drink a healing potion, I'm good to go. We want to make it interesting, right? We want to make it to where if you have these things that are character defining, that it might change the way you act, right? If you end up having a -5 constitution, because you froze to death, and now you're sort of rickety, you're permanently have a cold or something like that. That might also alter some of the ways that you play. We want to look into making it to where if you survive one of these life-changing injuries, you might not completely recover in the same way, but you should recover in a way that makes it feel like your character's not completely crippled. So you might not recover those 5 constitution points, but we might say when you're leveling, you're having to adjust everything you do. So maybe those 5 points in constitution, every time you level for the next 5 levels, you can spend 3 of your 3 points instead of 2, and that free extra point has to go into a mental stat, right? Or you can't increase your constitution. Instead, you get 3 points, and one of those points has to go to a mental stat, something like that. We can play around with it and make it interesting. Similar to the way magic items work, I want it to be unique to the individual character. So grunt work and mastery, this downtime change has been kind of a long time coming. For the players in the campaign, at the third note on here is something I do want you to pay attention to. Note 3 has a link to the mastery update. Those are going to be things for the players that they can retroactively apply all of this, right? I tried to make it as easy as possible. My notes are not perfect on what character is doing what thing. I do my best. Sometimes I say the name of the player, sometimes I say the name of the character, ideally with the combination of the potion ID number and the potion on the list. You should be able to look it up in the crafting channel if you don't get enough information from that. But the list should say this is everyone who has ever done grunt work in the campaign. And if those characters are still around and alive, they will get the mastery bonus, and anyone moving forward will get the mastery for crafting spells when doing downtime. So the mastery for casting spells, this is more of a clarification for the first part. You just can't get stuff during downtime. There is this thing, the desire to sort of, try to get as much as you can out of being in the town, doing as much as you can in a place that's safe. And while, yes, downtime activities do exist, the main thing is you're not going to progress your character during downtime. You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to be learning things on downtime. So if you're casting a spell, you're not going to gain any mastery. You can't have other people gather around and do stuff. We just don't want it to make it to where the optimal thing to do is to spend a bunch of time in town going through nitpicky things, because the more effort it is to play optimally, the kind of less fun it ends up being for the people that want to play this campaign when they have time, right? This game should not be something that requires you to check it every single day and be involved every single day. If you load up the Discord and you scroll through and see a game that's running, tomorrow night and you haven't played in a week and that's your only interaction with the campaign, you should be able to jump in and play. And you shouldn't feel like you're behind because you were not part of the bard chorus while they learned how to cast spells from a single character. Downtime activities, 10 days of downtime should be pretty self-explanatory. And the math stuff. Now, there's a big stuff for the math update that's happening here, which is what's happening with the monsters. The short version of all of the stuff in the monsters is monsters will no longer be normally rolling for initiative, and the monster stats are being changed to make their individual swings less deadly, and to give them on average more attacks. So there's more chances to avoid stuff, more chances to potentially get hit. But especially when you get to higher levels, the likelihood that you will die to a single swing is being decreased. Now, many of these changes have been actually done on my side, basically done live. But by the time that this is able to come out, you should have a lot of transparency. If you wanted to see what does the monster damage sheet look like, I can just show you, okay, here's the graph. This is all of the monsters in the game. And it should be able to be very transparent without ruining anything for people. Aid and hinder. This is a big change. This is going to matter. This is going to change quite a few of the DCs in the game. I did not enumerate it on this page, but it is quite a bit of different things. The one thing that's important for a DC change is going to be the DC to aid is now 15 instead of 12. And that might sound like it is a horrible nerf to aid and hinder, but it is not. It is a significant buff because of the new way that aid and hinder worked. Previously, if you attempted to aid someone and you failed at aiding them, you would apply 1 rank of hinder. And if you critically failed, you would do 2 ranks of hinder. Same thing with if you succeeded, 1 rank, and if you critically succeeded, 2 ranks. We want to make aid and hinder more of a integral part to what's happening here. The same thing with the way that the leadership is being buffed. We want to make the idea of teamwork and group play to be stronger. And so what we're doing is for players, a failure to aid still gives 1 rank of aid. So, if you're thinking about it, the old system, it used to be DC 12 gets you 1 rank of aid. It's now effectively DC 6 gives you 1 rank of aid. So it's significantly lowering the threshold in reality, and it is also bumping up the high end of things. So the critical success on aid is going to be a little bit harder to achieve because it's now 25 instead of 15 or instead of 22. But the classes that are going to be good at aiding are going to be getting bigger bonuses to leadership, which is going to make their aids a little bit better, and critical successes now apply 3 aids. So you can empower someone with a single check. We made a lot of different things about this, seeing whether it was too strong or not. It might end up being in the long run too advantageous to just have someone with you that does nothing but aid. But at the moment, that is what some of the classes are designed to do, and that has been pretty fun. So until that becomes a problem, instead of just what's happening with the campaign, we are going to keep it like this. The only thing that this doesn't apply to is for your retainers. Retainers will get the bonuses from leadership from whatever their primary character is, and they will still be going for DC 15. However, the difference is that if they fail, they will not be detracting from things. And we've somewhat already added that into the game as we've been going along. So I've talked a ton about the leadership change. Let's talk about what it actually does. So leadership is added to any D20 rolls to aid an ally or hinder an enemy. It determines how many characters you have, and it determines when you try to break morale checks. So I just enumerated a little bit of what a leadership is for, and we're going to talk about retainers. So it used to be retainers where you get a number of retainers equal to your leadership. They go out, they do stuff. Leadership also applies to the bonus. We wanted to make leadership a bigger number so that when they were aiding allies and aiding retainers, that the number was bigger, so to make the gap between, oh, I'm a leadership class and I'm not a leadership class, a bigger gap, make it more rewarding to feel like you're investing in aiding your allies. And because of that meant that we wanted to change the way retainers work, because we didn't need you bringing an army with you. So the new rules for retainers are you have to be at least level 2, and you have to have at least 1 leadership in order to take a retainer out. And then for each extra retainer you bring, you need to be up one tier. So you get 1 at level 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6 is 2, 7, 8, 9 is 3, 10, 11, 12, 13 is 4, and then at 14, when you're capped out, you can have 5 retainers with you. You can have a full cheerleading squad. There are going to be other things that change this. We've worked around a little bit with the way that we want to do it, but if you do not have at least one leadership, you do not have at least enough leadership to count for bringing retainers out, you still can't bring them. So for example, if you're a rogue and you have 0 leadership at level 4, that means you can't take any retainers out. You can't take out the 2, but if you're a warlord and you've got 5 or 6 leadership, you can't take 5 or 6 people out. You can still only take the maximum number allowed for your level. We're hoping that's going to make it different enough that the leadership classes will stand out and not restrictive enough to allow for retainers to still be a big part of play. We'll sort of see what happens when we're going from there. So casting with a scroll, we've updated this a little bit, just made it a little bit more clear, and we've updated a few minor bug fixes and things. I'm going to be working on the macros in Roll20 pretty heavily to make sure that things still work the way that we want them to do, and we're going to be updating all the class entries and things. Now, for this, if you do want one of the new class journals once they're completed, you can ask me and I'll give you one of the new class journals so you can transfer everything over, or I can show you what the updates are. Just be patient with me. There are literally hundreds of journal entries, and updating them all manually is impossible, and giving you a new copy of every journal entry is prohibitively obnoxious. So if I can find a way so that people can get access to a generalized one and then import it or export it or make copies of it, I will do that. I just don't know how to do that right now in Roll20 in an easy way. But hopefully that'll be a thing that people can make their own character copies moving forward. So heroic deeds, the main thing update here is going to be to rights. So rights are a new thing that are being introduced. They somewhat already exist in the game. Characters familiar with iconic items like Node, you have your Weasel Cleaver that has a right on it. They are specific sort of quests that are tied to higher level items that allow them to improve. And when a mouse is able to attempt to improve a magic item, they can do a heroic deeds check if they're able to qualify for one. And then if they meet the threshold that would normally create a magic item, so for the Must Marches campaign, that's 11, they would gain a right. They would gain a quest. They'd start a quest to go do something cool. And the DM and the player would work together to think, okay, well, what would be the quest to complete? What's the other half of this? And if they get 15 or higher, they don't need to do the quest. It sort of auto completes the quest. It was a cool enough moment in and of its own right to allow for the upgrade. And we might end up tweaking those numbers slightly if 11 ends up being too close to 15 and we want to have the rights. If the rights end up being very fun, we might spread those numbers out. But for the moment, I think it's a good starting point. So we also did the cap on the number of entering mice is 17. It's just making it to where everyone can have a class, one of each class, and if they want to have multiples of something, that's fine. But you are kind of limiting yourself. If you have two warlords, it might mean you can't have a fighter, and that's fine if that's what people want to play. But we do want it to make it if you want the ability to play a bunch of different classes, that you have the option to keep going until you can have one of everything. Different equipment things have been changed. Some rules about needing to make sure that you have things equipped in the right slots is here, and we've done some changes to shields. One of the things that I pay a lot of attention to when we're doing play testing and playing is, what do new players constantly intuit things to mean, and what do old players talk about? What rules do old players or experienced players frequently get wrong? And if it's something that the current incorrect answer is either more intuitive or makes more sense, or it's just what people default to for whatever reason, then I look at that and say, okay, maybe this should be the way it is. So with shields, I'm going to enumerate kind of a little bit of combination of how they work and how they're intended to work. The big thing is for shield block, and one of the confusions that I think is worth including a confusion that is worth having in the game, because when we play tested it the other way, it was not as fun, not as interesting, is the idea that shield block is an opportunity action that you can use once per round. Used to be a reaction, and some of the rules we're having to update to make sure it doesn't say it's a reaction, but using your reaction to block with your shield felt prohibitive to some of the other cool abilities and magic items that people would get, so we took it away from that. And the idea that you can either shield block or you can make an opportunity attack in a turn, that felt valuable. That felt interesting. That felt like, okay, I can either defend myself or I can punish you for moving away from me. Felt like it was a good choice to have in a tactical game. But one of the things that we also noticed was that multiple people, when they would ask, oh, I have a magic shield, what does the magic shield do? A lot of them would intuit, oh, I bet this increases the shield bonus. And they would look at the shield and notice, oh, the enhancement bonus also increases the health and the recovery of the shield. And they go, okay, those are intuitive things. But we've heard many times from different players, someone say, oh, well, does that mean I can block that number of times per round, right? They understand a +2 sword makes 2 attacks per round, or a +4 sword makes 4 attacks per round. And so they look at a +2 shield and go, oh, does that mean I can block twice a round? Or look at a +4 shield and say, does that mean I can block 4 times a round? And the answer previously was no, but at a certain amount of time you say, well, should the answer be no? And I think that the answer should actually be yes. I think the idea is good on an intuitive level, where you say, yeah, if you've got a +2 shield, you can block twice. If you've got a +2 weapon, you can attack twice. That makes sense. That is very intuitive, and it is something that I think would end up being more fun. And since monsters are also getting more frequent attacks that deal less damage, it also plays into that idea that you'd be able to block more attacks with your stronger shields, to be able to play into that less lethality at higher level with magic items and things like that. The weapons are being updated. The short version is a lot of the weapons that were two-handed are getting significantly stronger, because basically shields are so powerful and shields feel so much of a necessity by much of the player base that we wanted there to be a little bit more of a carrot for the weapons. The only two that I want to sort of bring up as outliers is the Great Axe, which is I think one of the only weapons, or the only weapon, to have a 15 stat requirement. It was sort of balanced to be with other things, and as we've been removing things and changing things with the weapon system, the Great Axe kind of got left behind. So the Great Axe is getting a pretty significant buff to its damage from 1d12 to 2d8 instead of 1d12 to 2d6 like it might be on some of the other things. So it would be normal one step up in dice. So that is the thing of note. And then the second thing is it was brought up in a couple of different instances that the axe was, with the new rules, basically worthless. Like, you'd never want to take an axe if you can take a short sword instead, and that felt bad. So the only one-handed weapon to get an increase for the playtest is the axe itself, making it a good slashing option if all you care about in melee is to slash. Damage and magical implements has been the way that it's always functioned. I'm just sort of explaining again, including new rules, a new version of the explanation to see if that helps with people. Potions with multiple doses. This is also not a change from the current rule set, but it is making it a little bit more clear. One of the things that was not in the current rule set that is supposed to be a thing is that a failed potion never has multiple doses. And it is something that you can sort of reverse engineer from the tables, because the tables for explaining how a dose works typically don't make any sense with the failure column. So if it says 1 die plus 2, and you notice that the critical success column says 68 plus 12, it's really easy to think, okay, well, that breaks down into 1d8 plus 2, right? 1 die plus 2. And then you look at the success column and it says 66 plus 12. And you go, okay, well, that's easy to break down again, right? It's 1d6 plus 2. And then you look at the failure column, and the failure column says 64 plus 4. And you go, well, that doesn't, the plus 4 instead of plus 12 means that you can't really break that down, which is true. That is intentional, and you shouldn't be able to break up a failed potion. But just making sure that that's clear in the rules. Something that is not going to be clear in the rules is esoterica. So the game system has 3 different ways for discovering spells. There is a building that allows players to discover spells. There is the esoterica, which gives you sort of a random chance when mice are working on spells to be able to unlock higher versions of that spell. A lot of the esoterica rolls, while I'm not going to make it clear how they function, if you are crafting the spell that is 1 rank below the one that is missing, so one of the 1 rank below the one that is unknown, you're much more likely to trigger the esoterica to be able to unlock the higher level spell than if you craft a low level spell. So just to use elementals, elemental bolt as an example, elemental bolt, the 1 step up in the evocation tree is going to be elemental blast. If you're crafting elemental bolt, you're going to have less of a chance of unlocking the level 6 elemental barrage than you will if you're crafting elemental blast. You're going to have less of a chance of that if you're crafting elemental wave or etc. Right? When you go up the higher levels, if you're crafting the one that's directly below the one you don't know, this is the highest likelihood of being able to unlock this spell. So that's a little bit of how esoterica is going to work. And then the last major thing we're going to talk about is superior materials. And again, this is another one of those things that ties in very strongly to the exploration pillar of the game. The DM's rules, the Appendix 6 for DM's rules when everything gets released and everything is public, is going to have hopefully several different charts, likely inspired by Worlds Without Number, of ways to think about how these special materials could be used, how these special materials can change. Because I don't want to include in the rule book, having a silver weapon is powerful against this type of monster. And the reason that I don't is because no matter how you splice it up, it makes it to where the idea that magic changes every year doesn't actually really apply, right? And it makes it to where when someone knows something, or they can read it in the rules, they can point to it directly, say, yes, we know exactly what this thing does. It says so right here in the rules. It takes away a little bit of the fun of the mystery and exploration and uncovering what's going on, discovering things of how magic should work. And that is core to the way that I want this game to feel. So what it instead will include is a bunch of different tables of like, oh, these are all the possible things that that different materials could do, and allow a DM to roll on tables or to select from a list or to roll some up and be like, okay, I'm going to roll up 4 of the things in this list of 20 objects, list of 20 effects, and I'm going to see which of the 4 I like the best, or 2 of the 4 that I like the best. And you can have multiple things tied to multiple different materials. And yeah, these are going to be subject to change intentionally. I have a static list already. I have done the chart for what all of these materials do. So they're not going to change during this campaign, but between campaign and campaign, or even between year and year in the same campaign, they will alter. And so there's a bunch of different things here, and there's a list of kind of what things work. Anything that has the little asterisks next to them is a rare material, so you have to have some of the material in order to craft with it, and a quick chart that kind of goes over how much it costs to craft the different things. After action reports, we talked a little bit about changing them, and basically they're going to stay more or less the same. The only change is going to be the terrible news tag that we have been using is going to be changed to the narrative tag, and instead of being always worth the same amount, it can be a variable amount. So everything that you see in here is going to be pretty much what you expect. It's going to be how we've been playing it anyways. The only real difference here is we want to make sure, again, promoting the idea of the exploration and the discovery is important. We want to be able to promote that idea in tangible rewards for the players. And there can be this sensation of, man, we went out and we learned all these cool things and we did all this cool stuff and we didn't get anything from it. We didn't level. We saw no progression on our mice, even though we are understanding things in the world. And then the second part of things can be, well, we figured out the puzzle of what to do, but somebody else took that information and went on adventure and got the thing and got all the experience for it. Well, shit, why did we bother solving the puzzle and sharing our information? Should we keep this information to ourselves? And we don't want that to be a thing. That is antithetical to how West March's campaign works. So the solution that we're going to be looking into is having a narrative reward that gives the, okay, we just sat and talked and we learned all these things and we went into the deep lore of the world. Give that some sort of reward, because that should be rewarding to the players, even if it doesn't come with other stuff. And the narrative tag, the change here will be the old Terrible News tag was always the same amount, 50 EXP, and it was just EXP. The narrative tag will be something that you're now making it important to the whole counties, and the assumption is that the higher houses are paying a premium for that. And by paying, I mean gold. So you're going to get gold from a narrative tag, and you're also going to get the associated experience. So a little bit of a change there, a little bit of a way to make it to where if you're doing cool stuff, you can do something else. One thing that's kind of tucked in the bottom here is rules for using devices. And for some of you, you might see this in the patch notes and go, what the hell is that there for? I have not seen a device yet. I don't see any other rules for devices in the system. And you're correct. This is something that only a few people have discovered, and maybe only started the discovery of what is happening next. And it's been added here so that the rules are in there for when the bigger section of rules for devices gets included, but it's also added in there as a little Easter egg for people who are looking forward to uncovering different things in the campaign. So once again, thank you very much for being part of the campaign and being part of the sort of extended playtest that is the 2024 campaign. I look forward to running tons more games with people, and see you at table soon.